All right, people, we back. Victory and Vices podcast. Me, Rory Spooner. Reese Henley is back with me again. No James Veck, as you can see. He is
Part-time.
Yeah, part-time. Yeah, he's incapacitated. He'll be back next week. So yeah, we're back with the news and the views, and there's quite a bit to cover this week. So, and there's actually some really interesting stuff too. So we'll kick off with Ryan Reynolds and Wrexham. Now, as a Welsh football podcast, that's interesting, because when it comes to foreign owners, we've also had a lot to say on this podcast as well. So, Reese, I'll let you kick off the proceedings. Your take on Ryan Reynolds and Wrexham and this potential love affair that has sort of found its way to the mainstream.
Yeah. So, obviously, for anyone who doesn't know, Ryan Reynolds looks like he's going to be, him and his partner are going to be the majority stakeholders shareholders in Wrexham Football Club. Why Wrexham? Anyone's guess, really. I don't think there's necessarily a connection between the two, but that's obviously the way they've gone. They've marked it as a good business opportunity, and fair play to them. Ryan Reynolds is one of those actors, or one of those people who is more of an entrepreneur. He's got his own brand of gin, aviation gin. He just said, look, I think it's a good business opportunity. I'm going to start up. I'm going to do well with it. And aviation gin is one of the awards. It's one of the top selling gins in the USA. So the guy knows how to run a business. I think it was actually quite funny the other day when it was announced that he was going to be taking over Wrexham. The story goes, there's a guy out in Wrexham somewhere who invites lots of fans around to his house. For house parties after the game, Ryan Reynolds has obviously gone by the house, left a case full of aviation gin.
Yeah.
I'll be back to claim this and now we'll have the house parties after the game. So that is a touch of class from Ryan Reynolds. And if you're a Wrexham fan, then I think we must be going on here 12, 13 years now. They dropped out of the Football League, and when they first went into the conference all those years ago, you thought, yeah, they'll climb straight back out of that, and they haven't really got close. I think they've challenged playoffs a few times, but they really haven't got close to doing it. So it would be nice to see them, get back in the big time. And Salford have shown recently how just minimal investment can get you out of those jams, and then they look to be now a really solid Football League side, Salford. So I think Wrexham will go the same way. Ryan Reynolds has obviously said he wants to make them a global force. Do you know what? 2020 strikes again, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It's just, I don't know. I was trying to think of a word to describe it earlier on, but it's been such a strange year that I don't know how to describe it. I'm reading about it now, and it says, why Wrexham? And then Rob McElhenney, I believe it's pronounced, his partner in the venture, says, why not? So let that be the theme for 2020. If anybody says, why you? We'll say, well, why not? Yeah, that's a great answer to give. Why Wrexham? Why not? Why me? Why not? That's what you should say. And do you know what? They come across as great guys. Like you said, they've got the aviation gin. I follow the captain on Twitter, bootlegger himself, Mr. Pilsner. And he was the biggest icon at Wrexham till Ryan Reynolds came along. It's a closer tie now than it is with anybody else, but those two together on social media, it has to happen. I'm going to throw it out there now. Ryan Reynolds, aka Deadpool, aka Van Wilder, aka Detective Pikachu, and the captain, the bootlegger, they need to come together for some sort of video. They've got to do something, because it's too intriguing for it not to happen. But the whole thing is just, I don't know, Reese, it's bizarre. I mean, they were saying, why Wrexham, why not? I think Wrexham appealed to them. They said it was the third oldest football club in, I don't know if it's the world or the UK. I'm paraphrasing what I've read. And they felt like Wrexham was obviously a very, working class place. It reminded them of a lot of where I think McElhenney grew up in. I think it was Pennsylvania or somewhere, or Philadelphia, I think it was. So they got the impression that it was a sound little investment. Now, what I've read that's really interesting, and you mentioned finances, Reese, because obviously they could bankroll it themselves. It's no problem. They can give a good financial launch pad. What I have worked out is that there's going to be some sort of Netflix documentary about it, where Netflix pay roughly around £300,000 to £800,000 per hour of content for an 8-episode series. Wow. So let's say Wrexham are at the top end of that with Ryan Reynolds. They could be getting £800,000 per episode for an 8-episode gig, just to reinvest back into the club. Look, it sounds romantic. It sounds like, I'm getting misty-eyed thinking about it. I just hope it doesn't end up going sour.
Look,
that would be my take.
I mean, if they were taking over, let's say an established championship club, let's say someone with a bit of history, let's say Sheffield Wednesday, just to pluck a name out of the sky. If they were taking over Sheffield Wednesday, for example, then we might say, you know what? If they come in with the right intentions, we're never going to say that's bad news. And if they're going to come in and pump money into the side and they want to make them a force again, and fantastic, crack on. No one's going to be upset about it, maybe apart from the Sheffield United fans.
Yeah.
So if they're coming into Wrexham, instead of Sheffield Wednesday in this scenario, and just like that scenario, there's nothing wrong with them coming in, showing the right attitude, coming with the right ideas, and essentially the financial incentives and the want to back that up. However, in the Sheffield Wednesday scenario, there is the potential for them to then asset strip the club, do the wrong things. We've seen things go wrong in the Football League too many times over the last few years. With Wrexham, I wouldn't be so concerned. It's not that their club isn't insignificant. It's just that there's not a lot there to asset strip. There's not a lot if they're coming there to purely use it as a cash cow, to use it as a vessel. You would pick a club that was different to Wrexham. You'd pick a club that was more suitable to do that. And moreover, just the smallest amount of investment, forget the figures that you were talking about on Netflix and things like that, just the smallest amount of investment goes so far in those leagues. And so even if they just pump money in for 24 months, 2 years, 2.5 years, if they just put money in for 2.5 years, that gets a minimum League Two. And that's where they want to be, and that's where the fans want to be. And if you were to tell the fans, look, you've been in the conference 12 years, you're going to get new owners, they're going to pump money in, you're going to get into League Two, and you'll have enough money pumped in, you'll be an established League Two side. Then they're going to absolutely run for the hills. You'll never see them again, and you'll be scrambling for new owners. They probably say, yeah, okay, we'll take that. So I wouldn't be too concerned as long as it's running the right way and it's sustainable. Then it's very little risk for Wrexham fans.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I suppose it is significantly lower risk than other takeovers we've seen, and I hope it has a happy ending. I don't wish any football clubs, irrespective of who they are, any ill will or any sort of damage in that respect, because long term is it's very damaging, not just for the football club but for the community as well. But yeah, they reckon if Wrexham have around 2 million invested in one season, they would be favourites for promotion. Right now, they are 14th in the National League and 1 point above the relegation zone. And this is actually very interesting, this next part. Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney, they have both said that, although they've guaranteed they've guaranteed this to Wrexham, that the club cannot be relocated, renamed or rebranded, which is excellent. That's a good start. So in terms of, as you say, asset stripping, point A to point B is moving in the right direction. They're going forward. So best of luck to them. We wish you well. We will obviously be keeping an eye on things. It's the best story of 2020 thus far, given the year has been so shit.
I would just love them to be renamed. I would just absolutely love Ryan Reynolds to come in and just rename them something like Wrexham Rising or some sort of weird MLS name, and there to be like confetti cannons every time a non-league goal is scored. I would be all for it. The more ridiculous, the better. If
he comes dressed as Deadpool, for example, just shows up.
That's the spot right there. Gonna start looking for a job.
Yeah. It's I don't know what even now I'm speechless. I'm trying to think of something to say, and it's just so, it almost seems too far-fetched to happen, even though it's happening.
There is a great opportunity there for him to make every American And also, every British football fan, there's an opportunity to make their second club Wrexham. Make it as ridiculous as possible. Deadpool's standing everywhere. All the ball boys dressed as Deadpool. Literally, as ridiculous as you can make it, go one further. And then all of a sudden, everyone's second team is Wrexham. Suddenly, the conference is sexy, and we just want to see what's going on.
Make it lower league football sexy. I love it. What a great way to end 2020. So yes, that is Ryan Reynolds and Wrexham. Obviously, Wrexham fans and Welsh football fans, and quite frankly, anybody that's a Ryan Reynolds fan, let us know your opinion on it. We're always happy to get in the comments below and talk about it. From one positive story to another, Mr. Marcus Rashford, MBE. Now, Marcus Rashford is young, he's black, and he's chipped up. And he is a Conservative's fucking nightmare. They have cold sweats when that boy comes on the TV because they just do not know how to handle him. I've got to say, right, you've probably been on the podcast when I've talked about this before. I don't fawn over celebrities. I don't put footballers on pedestals. I understand that they are young men with a lot of attention, with a lot of money, and they generally live in a bubble. They don't live the same life as me and Reece. Well, Reece has a bit more money than me, but look, they don't live the same life as us. And it's, I think it's sometimes it's asking a lot for footballers to be social justice warriors. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they can't do it. If they have room in their schedule or they are passionate about it, I'm not against them coming out of that bubble and trying to do their bit for their community or the wider communities or the country in general. So for that, I have to salute Marcus Rashford because I have no expectations of these people. And I think sometimes in life, that is the best way to approach people. If you have no expectations of them, you will more often than not be surprised by what they produce. Whereas if you put them on a pedestal and you have ridiculous expectations of them, you're always going to be let down. So your take, Reece, on Marcus and his crusade to feed the hungry.
It's really hard to criticize somebody who's doing so many, selfless things. I think that whilst we should praise Marcus Rashford on what he's done with his free school meals, what he's doing with the Read a Book campaign for the children. It's all good stuff, it reaches further than just Greater Manchester as well. So, it's nice to see that footballers can not only use their financial capability, but also their platform to raise awareness of certain issues and ultimately use those platforms to create social change. And especially when you compare to footballers like Phil Foden or Mason Greenwood, people just to put in a list who are making the wrong kind of headlines, it's nice to occasionally see one of a footballer actually doing the right kind of thing. So that's always nice. And I think that Marcus Rashford actually did say in the week that his inspiration for doing this kind of thing, I thought he was going to say Gandhi or someone ridiculous like that. He actually said it was Raheem Sterling, because if you remember, Raheem Sterling has been less so, actually, ironically, this year, but more over the last few years. Raheem Sterling has been incredibly outspoken on issues of race, and Rashford actually said that he was inspired by Sterling to voice his concerns on social, on certain issues and try and attain social change. And there are people out there who think that Rashford is doing this all on his own, all off his own back, and I don't buy it. I buy that it's his idea, that he thinks that these things are important, and they are important to him. But he's obviously got a team of people around him. He's got the right people around him, which is always good. And they're doing good things, and you can't criticize it, you can't knock it. So carry on doing what you're doing.
Yeah, they say it takes a village to make change, or it takes a village to make it happen. It does. It's not just a one-man thing. Marcus will be the face of it, but there'll be a whole network of people behind him. By the sounds of it, very solid people, which is a good thing, because more often than not, we're on this podcast talking about the slimier side of the game behind the scenes, the people that run it, the people that look after footballers. Mino Raiola is a perfect example. So I'm not mad at that. Me and Becky did a video many moons ago about Raheem Sterling, and the video was, could Raheem Sterling be the next Colin Kaepernick? At the time, there was a lot of talk about Raheem Sterling moving in very similar circles to Kaepernick. Obviously, the Black Lives Matter movement had, I think, it maybe just started then, and Kaepernick had took a knee for injustices within the black community, and Raheem Sterling started to voice his concerns and his annoyance at the way black players and black people were being treated in general. So is Raheem Sterling a good role model to have? I think he is. I think he gets an awful lot of stick. What I will say is this: the smear campaign against Marcus Rashford has begun. The Daily Mail had their article the other day about how he invested his money into property, which I find bizarre, given the fact that he's earned the money himself. It's no different to me and Reece earning money and then investing into property. I mean, I'm sure we'd both love to buy our families, property each and have them be mortgage free. There's nothing wrong with that, So I don't really understand the Daily Mail, I understand why they want to come for Marcus Rashford, because it's a conservative newspaper. There's higher ups in that conservative government that are like, you throw as much dirt in his name as you can because he is making us look foolish. And keep going, Marcus. We're all here for you, bro.
Yeah, really. I mean, anyone who wants to put pressure on the government and point out their shortcomings, it's as a member of the public. Forget your status, your fame. As a member of the public, you have the right to do so, and I don't care. Just go for it.
Yeah, same. Yeah. We're not obviously anarchists on this podcast. We're all just working class lads with a sprinkle of anarchy in us when the time is right. But look, go for it. Yeah, if you want to apply pressure to them, they're clearly not doing their jobs right, as this pandemic has shown. Their lack of thought for anybody outside the elite top 5% is quite frankly staggering. So for somebody within that top 5%, because Marcus Rashford, believe me, is in that top 5% when it comes to earning money, for him to actually come out of that bubble, we salute you, bro. So keep doing what you do. Obviously, we'll update you all as it comes along. But Marcus Rashford, soul stripper, net finder, kid feeder. We will leave it at that. So, yeah, salute to Marcus. Going back to the Premier League, the 5 subs rule. So we wanted to touch upon that as well, because we felt like the Premier League, there's times when it's so forward thinking, but then there's times when it's just so archaic in terms of its thinking as well. From a standpoint of the 5 sub situation, Reece, I believe you said the Championship have adopted it now, but the Premier League still haven't. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the Championship have now announced that I don't know if it's effective immediately, but they have announced that the 5 subs are going to come back for this season. So for Championship clubs, that's obviously huge, because they're less likely to be able to have enough depth in their squad just for financial reasons, just as how they're unlikely to have state-of-the-art fitness facilities, fitness coaches, and all this kind of thing. For expensive operations for their players and things. So that makes a no-brainer, the Championship. In some ways, it's a no-brainer for the Premier League. They haven't. It's not that they said it's not going to happen. At the start of the season, it was announced that it wasn't going to happen, and now they haven't said anything. So I think it is classic of the Premier League, really, to not communicate with the fans and the clubs effectively. I think that they've shown that on a number of issues, and the fact that they've made this mistake and may or may not be deliberating on it now, ahead of changing the rule mid-season. It's all a bit of a shambles, really, the way that things are run top to bottom sometimes. But on more of a explanatory level, the 5 subs rule could work for some clubs, and obviously for other clubs, it would be disastrous from a form point of view. Yeah. None of them would complain from the perspective of fitness issues and things like that. But I just wanted to get your view on how you think that will play out on the pitch.
Do you know, it's an interesting one. I think from a player welfare standpoint, it's very important. We've seen with Liverpool, as we'll touch upon in a moment, that fatigue is starting to set in already. And you've got players now that have played straight for the best part of 3 or 4 seasons. and they're going into a year in 2021 where they'll have the Euros in the summer, they'll have hardly any break, they'll be back into the Premier League, and then obviously, I don't know if it's World Cup or World Cup qualifying that comes up as well. So there's very little break. Some of these players will be playing 3, 4, 5 years without a break. And just from a player welfare standpoint, not just a physical one, but a mental one, I feel like it's important that we start to look after people. We're constantly hearing people say, oh, be kind, or, mental health is mental wealth, and various other things. And you're right, I'm not against any of that. But at the same time, you need the higher-ups to implement that. And we've seen recently, Reece, that the people in charge of the FA, they're old, they're archaic, they aren't really in touch. Their finger isn't on the pulse. I mean, there is no pulse as far as they're concerned. It's just how much money can we make in this calendar year. So it's hard, because for football players, they're not robots. They can't go on forever. At some point, they do need a break. For a lot of teams, like you said, it may impact them on a form level, in a sense that you're chopping and changing so much. It might be difficult to get into a rhythm. You might be looking at games where teams dominate for an hour, and the last 30 minutes of that game is just completely just rank. It's just, a horrible performance where you're thinking, God, what's happened to this team? Where was the team in the first half? But that is what happens when you have 5 subs. It does become disjointed. You do lose a lot of momentum. So it swings and roundabouts. I mean, for this season at least, I think it's a necessity, especially with player fatigue and just player welfare. But I mean, I don't know. What's your take on it?
It's hard to say, because on the one hand, you can talk about player welfare, and the Premier League may vote in favour of 5 subs, but then on the other, you're letting them go on international breaks every 3 weeks, or with an fixture break. And I believe that it's been announced that there's not going to be a winter break this year.
Yeah.
So on that side of things, it's really hard to see any consistency. Speaking about it more on a form point of view and trying to predict what's going to happen, I mean, cast your mind back to the first lockdown. There were winners and there were losers. Sheffield United, I don't believe, have won a game since the coronavirus pandemic shut down football in March. Yeah. And they were going great guns. On the flip side of that argument, Man United, I think as soon as they were allowed 5 subs in football, they were flying. And this season started, they haven't had 5 subs. And let's be honest, well, they're in the bottom half. They're below Newcastle. I mean, we've talked about how bad Newcastle have been. So there will be winners and losers. I think you look at, like you said, momentum is huge, and momentum can be broken up by 5 subs. You look at the major winners, you'd say would be like a Leeds United, a team that plays with a constant press, being able to inject energy into a side with players who know to play in a certain philosophy. That's going to, impact on them positively, I would imagine. And that constant press will be, even better in the second half as players become more tired. And then there are teams like, for example, Newcastle, who don't play that way and won't really benefit at all. And the teams that they are sitting back deep against, waiting for them to become tired or a lapse in concentration, well, that team they're playing against will have, renewed players with renewed energy, renewed motivation and things. So they won't benefit, at least on paper. So it's a bit of a strange one. I mean, what I do know is that I compare the 5 subs rule with the terrible football that we saw at the back end of last season. And as soon as they dropped that, then we had great football at the start of this season. So it's a real hard one to read into. One thing that is good about it is that you would imagine, at least, that the young players, the academy prospects of all the team, would in theory get time on the pitch, which is good.
Yeah, no, it is. I read an interesting story yesterday, Reece, and I forgot to actually include you in the tweet. Not so much about fatigue or subs, but the way the world is right now. The Norwegian FA, because of COVID, basically, there was restrictions on, I think, Norwegian players leaving Norway or coming back. So they had to try and find an entire Norwegian 11 outside of Norway. Now, that just, again, sums up what's going on, whether it's COVID or 5 subs. Everything is all over the place. And player welfare, is, it has to be at the forefront of what's going on. So good on the Norwegian FA. I mean, they could have ignored that and gone, you know what, with the Norwegian FA, we do what we want. We're going to take them out of the country and bring them back, and we'll abide by our own rules. But they didn't. They tried to find a way around it. So from that respect, I thought, okay, player welfare, they're trying to take care of them. I can get down with that.
Yeah, I mean, my personal point of view is I wouldn't have 5 subs back. I think that you've made a decision. The top people have looked at the relevant sports science and decided that the correct decision is to have 3 subs. Yeah. Now teams have set up, managers have looked at strategies and things in order to play a game plans that involve 3 subs. I think to change it now is unfair. I think that lots of that kind of stuff will go out the window. I mean, you look at teams like Southampton who've enjoyed a great start to the season, and I don't really see many signs that their start, the way that they're playing and the style at which they play is going to stop in its tracks at any point. Of course, they'll fall away. They're not going to be winning the title, and they're probably not going to get European football, but they will still continue to play well. Well, changing up into 5 subs, that can change a lot. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it will be a lot. It will change the way teams play. And teams like Southampton in the Premier League, teams like Swansea in the Championship, who've all, you say, overachieved so far, they could struggle now. It's a bit of a leveler that is unwelcome to those clubs, I think. Teams like Burnley, who are at the bottom, Sheffield United, they may find that kind of leveler helps them. And to be honest, I'm not for it. That kind of handicapping, not for it.
Yeah. Do you know what? I would let it play out until around maybe New Year's Day. And then if I was the Premier League, I'd analyse the amount of injuries and go, okay, we maybe need to do something here. Because there's no winter break either. But, I mean, look, it's open for debate. Everybody at home, let us know again, comments below. What's your take on the 5 subs rule? Should it exist right now for the rest of the season? Should it not exist? Obviously, we want to hear from you. Going on to some transfer stuff as well. It's more of a transfer rumour than an actual transfer link, which I found quite interesting. And I mentioned it to Reece before we came on. Was Granit Xhaka. Granit Xhaka was mentioned in a swap deal for Christian Eriksen. Now, all of you who watch football on a sort of a weekly or daily basis will know Christian Eriksen is an ex-Tottenham Hotspur player, and an ex-Tottenham Hotspur player going to Arsenal is well unheard of unless you're Sol Campbell. But the rumours are quite strong, and the link itself is an interesting one because Arsenal obviously still have Mesut Ozil on the books. They can't get rid of him, but they do need a replacement for him. Xhaka has never really caught fire at Arsenal, so a move maybe to Serie A would suit him better. And Eriksen, for some reason, is just not wanted at Inter. I don't know. It's a really strange signing, Reece. When they bought him, everyone was like, wow, this is the move for him. He's got Lukaku in front of him. Ashley Young is going to be throwing in the crosses out wide. What could possibly go wrong? And again, it just hasn't worked out for him. So again, your take, Reece, on that transfer rumour that's currently floating around, shall we say?
Yeah, a bit of a strange one. I mean, it would be strange to see it happening. You sometimes you get a sense in football. Things can surprise you, but you get a sense of whether, a certain player, when a certain player arrives at a club, you think, I could see that kind of coming. This isn't one of those. I think getting rid of Xhaka is obviously something that's going to be on Arteta's mind, if not in the next transfer window, then maybe the one after. I don't think in his plans, especially with the acquisition of Thomas Partey. All that being said, I think the Ozil situation is a very unwelcome part of Arsenal Football Club at the moment. And it's something that they'll be looking at, like I said, again, to try and sort out in the next couple of transfer windows. With Christian Eriksen, I mean, he essentially down tools at Tottenham in a really disgraceful way. And that was the beginning of the end of Pochettino, really. And he's done that to his manager just a few months after reaching the Champions League final, being so influential, and he did become a rotten egg, and then he's gone over to Inter Milan with renewed motivation, and for whatever reason it looks like that's happened again. He's not wanting to be at Inter. He is a bad egg, you'd have to say, at this time. And Arsenal are just they're just coming into a moment now where, yes, they do lack quality in some areas of the pitch, but they're just coming into a phase of the club where they had a lot of bad eggs and they've weeded them out over time. And Arteta's got his philosophy, he's got his mentality that he's put into these players. The last thing he needs to do now is acquire a player who is going to, create friction at the club. And you never want to be in a position as a manager where you're signing a player that you think, right, if it comes down to it, and it was me or Eriksen, who the board going to pick? And I wouldn't back them to necessarily pick Arteta all day of the week, every day of the week. So it's a bit of a strange one. I wouldn't foresee that one happening. I think any club taking a gamble on Eriksen at the moment is just that. It's a gamble. You're getting a quality player if he wants to play for you, but you also know that can change the drop of a hat. So I can't see that one. I think they might look to offload Xhaka and either bring in someone else or just leave it.
Yeah. I'm with you 100%. I can't see it happening. I don't know. Eriksen, the impression everybody got was Eriksen wanted to go to Spain. So it would have been Atletico Madrid, Real Madrid, or Barcelona. None of them wanted him. None of them came in. So it always feels like Inter was kind of a move he had to take. Not that he wanted to take it. He just had to get away from Spurs. So again, Inter didn't work out because he didn't want to be there. Spurs didn't work out because he didn't want to be there. I don't think he'd really want to go to Arsenal. Again, I think it'd be very similar to what happened to him at Inter Milan. I think he'd be shoehorned into the move. He'd have to do it because there's nothing else. That then creates a bit of resentment because he's like, I'm here, but I don't really want to be here. And all of a sudden, with him being ex-Spurs, it creates a whole wave of controversy around him that, like you said, Reece, is quite frankly unwanted. So, I can't see it happening myself, but, we'll keep you posted on developments, people, and we'll let you know. But Arsenal fans, Spurs fans, get in the comments below. Inter Milan fans, I know some of you watch too, get in the comments and let us know what you think. That was the sort of the transfer rumour that we wanted to discuss. Going on to other news, FPL, obviously our new favourite thing, as we say on this podcast. I am currently top of the shop in terms of the V&B boys, although Reece is very, very close behind me, and James Beck is somewhere in the distance. So with all of us looking at FPL, now I've only had a glance at the fixtures, but I've got them in front of me again. So we'll go over a few bits and pieces because obviously we want to give you some FPL advice. I think I'm going to be playing my wild card this week. Because what I'm doing, I'm trying to look at building a team, not just for this week, but maybe for the next couple of weeks. So the players that I'm going to try and incorporate, I'm going to try and look at the fixtures over the coming weeks to see how many fixtures there are, who they're against, what chances they've got, things like that. So the wild card looks like it's going to be played Thursday night. I've got nothing else to do. I'm going to sit down during lockdown and just look through about 4 weeks worth of fixtures because that's the type of loser I am. So with that being said, Reece, have you got any idea who you're going to sort of be putting in your side this week?
Yeah, well, I like many. I'm in a unique position now where a virus is actually destroying my team. I think that there's lots of people out there with Liverpool players on their side, maybe some people with Trent Alexander-Arnold and Joe Gomez in their team, who are now looking at their team just going, oh my God, I've got to do something here because I've got 3 or 4 people out. I think I played my wild card 2 weeks ago.
You did, yeah.
And since then, I think I've had 5 injuries and 3 people out with COVID. So, I mean, I'm in a problem. I'm in problems now. I need to sort it out. And the only way I can do that now is to think about playing a free hit, which, for those playing Fantasy Premier League for the first time is when you can change your team in its entirety for 1 week and then it snaps back to what it was before the following week. So I might use that to put people like Diogo Jota in, who would be cheap. Then other people who, for example, Shea Adams, who's playing instead of Danny Ings. People like this. But really, at the moment, there's a lot of people out there who need to stop the bleeding more than they need to, start trying to fire on all cylinders. It's about damage limitation at this stage for me.
Yeah, I noticed Kolasinac got a dose of COVID. Salah got a dose of COVID. El Neni got a dose of COVID. Pulisic and I think Havertz, I read correctly, are out of the Newcastle-Chelsea game. So
Matt Doherty as well.
Yeah, Doherty, yeah. So if you are looking to incorporate those players, watch this video and don't. Maybe come back to them. From a defensive standpoint, I don't know how you feel about it, Reece, about Newcastle, Chelsea. Again, I would stack the deck and put in some Chelsea defenders. If you are going to go for a creative player, I think a Hakim Ziyech would be an excellent shout this week, as would a Bruno Fernandes with Manchester United and West Brom. Players I would look to bring in the midfield, I would look to bring in Bruno Fernandes. I would look to bring in Hakim Ziyech. In defence, I would again look at players like Ben Chilwell, Reece James, Kurt Zouma, Thiago Silva. Mendy is a good price as a Chelsea goalkeeper. Aaron Wan-Bissaka would be a very good shout. I think Alex Telles is back now as well after his COVID. I don't know, maybe not. Double check Thursday night, maybe before you do it, or Friday night. But there's a few players in there that I've got my eye on. In terms of sort of a creative aspect, Reece, I mean, is there one particular player you'd be looking at? Do you think you want to incorporate this weekend?
Like I said, I mean, there's a lot of damage limitation in my team at the moment. I need to get whatever players I can out that are injured, and try and put them in. I mean, like you said, Chelsea Newcastle is an interesting fixture. You never know. I would say you never know what you're going to get from Newcastle, but you do. You're not going to get a very entertaining football match. Steve Bruce has historically been quite lucky with his results against some of the big teams, through no tactical nous at all, just from pure last minute one attack, lucky penalty or whatever. So you don't really know what you're going to get in terms of a result. But you've got to back the Chelsea players to score. I mean, Newcastle haven't looked good this season going forward. I wouldn't buy any Newcastle players in, as far as I'm concerned, for the rest of the season. But Hakim Ziyech is certainly one.
Yeah.
Tammy Abraham as well. Like he's had a really good start to the season. He may play against Newcastle. If you're playing a free hit, he might be good for a one-off game. But yeah, sure. I mean, for damage limitations, it has to be the priority.
Yeah, interesting. Obviously, Manchester United home to West Brom, so any United attacking players that are going in there, be it, Rashford, Marshall, Cavani, all good shouts. Bruno Fernandes is obviously a very big shout as well. Chelsea, I'd recommend Hakim Ziyech. I'd also recommend any of the Chelsea back line, because I think they're going to get some points. Aston Villa at Brighton, Oliver Shopkins, first of his name, leader of House Shopkins. He banged against Arsenal. He banged. Chat shit and get banged by Oliver Shopkins. Put him in. Aston Villa at home to Brighton, good shout again. Grealish is another one. Look, he's on absolute flames right now, Jack Grealish is. So if you want to incorporate him and Barkley alongside maybe a Ziyech, that's another good shout. Looking at Fulham at home to Everton, Calvert-Lewin, you'd fancy him to get a couple of goals. Maybe James Rodriguez in behind him as well. They're good shouts also. And the other one that I was looking at was...
I would disagree with you here.
Really?
With Everton, yeah. Those of you who've got Everton, I could be wrong. I could say this and, all of a sudden, Calvert-Lewin could bang in a hat-trick this weekend. But I don't know. You have to look at their performances over the last 3-4 weeks, and they have not been at it. And I would start to seriously consider taking out your Everton players. Yeah, albeit, they've had good starts to the season. Their values have increased. But start to look at it now and start to play the odds. I think Everton are going to start to struggle. We're going to start to see them, lower themselves down the league. Might be time to start incorporating Aston Villa players or other form teams in your team.
Yeah, that's interesting. You should say that. I mean, I personally am going to do it for this one-off game, but then I would look maybe a little further forward ahead. But yeah, the other game I had my eye on as well was Palace are away at Burnley. I wouldn't back Burnley to score. I would, if you want to put a Palace defender in, whomever that may be. I'm sure there's some decent options. Obviously, the main man, Zaha, as well. So if you're looking for goals or assists, most of that good Palace play is going to come via him. So, yeah, there's some good shouts. Obviously, from a midfield standpoint, from a defensive standpoint. Again, get in the comments below and let us know what you're thinking. And if you do have maybe, shall we say, an underrated tip, someone that we might not usually think of that you're putting in this week, I'm always interested to hear. So, yeah, get in touch and let us know. So that's FPL. We do have some questions as well from our viewers. Question 1, I'll read it out loud first. Now, Reece, you can obviously read out loud your one as well. So the question Becky sent over, this is from one of his people, someone that he knows. It's actually a very interesting question. So it says, with City struggling in the Premier League and Real Sociedad leading at La Liga, should Man City have done more to keep David Silva? He's been class for them. Foden hasn't been the replacement they needed. So that was the first question. So we'll come on to it in a moment. And what was your question, Riso?
Yeah, I've had a question from Mitchell as well. He just wants us to really discuss the mess that Real Madrid and Barcelona find themselves in at the moment and how they get out of it. And obviously those two questions actually tie into each other with Real Sociedad, leading La Liga at the moment. I think the question about David Silva is probably not as straightforward as it might seem, because on the face of it, Man City not doing well this season, Sociedad doing well this season, the common denominator, David Silva, he's the main man. But I don't know if it's necessarily that simple. I mean, first of all, Man City probably wouldn't have wanted him to go. I think it's probably a decision he's made. Obviously, we know 2 years ago when his wife gave birth, there were massive complications.
Yes.
And you don't know what happens in a person's head. You don't know if he wants to go home, spend time with family, things like that. And so, who knows the motivation behind leaving. It's not like City sold him. It was a free transfer. And if, you wouldn't get rid of a player like David Silva on a free if you couldn't, come to terms with him in some way.
Yeah.
So I don't know necessarily if whatever effort they could have done to get him to stay would have worked. And they're also a squad in transition. They need to get rid of these older players. You look at Fernandinho, they've struggled getting rid of him. He's been called into the squad a few times and they have struggled, but eventually you do need to get rid of your older players. They did well to get rid of Yaya Toure with no effect on the squad.
Yeah.
You look at Fernandinho, you look at...
Aguero's another one, Reece, now, yeah.
Well, that's going to be coming up in the future. I don't think they're there quite yet, but that's going to be coming up in the future. So it is important to slowly get rid of these older players and start to put people in their positions. Like Foden's not ready yet, but could he be the player who steps into that role in 2-3 years' time? Well, they're hoping he can be, and Guardiola certainly seems to think he will be. So I don't know if necessarily that's so important, the David Silva thing. But yeah, I suppose they have missed him. But what they've missed more than anything is defensive stability.
Now, they miss an Aguero replacement as well, which will make our transfer videos very interesting this week.
And then the misconception then about Real Sociedad is, yes, David Silva has been good this season, but Real Madrid and Barcelona have been poor. Somebody was going to come and knock them off their perch if they played in the way that they've played, and someone has, that team being Real Sociedad. But it's not just David Silva. It's like David Silva's going into that side and he's got all the goals and all the assists. They've got players who have been on top form this season. They've got Mikel Oyarzabal.
Glad you said it.
No, I probably haven't said it right, but he's pitched him 6 goals, a few assists this year. You got a player like Porto, who was the other winger. He's got 4. I think you've got your guy Januzaj. Januzaj, yeah. He's got David Silva's got 1 goal and 2 assists this year. That's as many as Nacho Monreal's got in that team. So he's a good player, but they've got lots of good players all firing, they're on top form and they're decent players to begin with. So in one sense it's not so surprising to see them doing well. So I don't necessarily think so. No, to answer that question, is it so important? What do you think?
Do you know what? I think Phil Foden. Look, I remember watching Phil Foden playing for England against Spain. And I remember when we first started the podcast. I can vividly remember us first the discussion. It's on SoundCloud somewhere if you want to go listen to it. And I'm a huge Phil Foden fan. I was a bigger fan after the Icelandic events because I thought, yeah, I like this lad. I got a lot of time for that. So, yeah, but on a serious note, though, he's such a talented lad. He's so talented. And Guardiola sees it. And realistically, if you do a side-by-side comparison, what is Phil Foden doing now at 19 or 20? What was David Silva doing at 19 or 20? Phil Foden is ahead in terms of his development at the same age. So like you said, Reece, you've got to give him a little bit of time, 2 or 3 seasons to fully develop. at which point he can start to really leave his mark. The David Silva thing is interesting. There was some issue, like you said, there was complications with his wife giving birth, and I think there was issues with his son from a health standpoint. So he wanted to leave. There was a move to Lazio, which never materialised. I think because a move to Spain did materialise, and he wanted to go back to Spain. So I can't knock that. It's difficult to put a gun to his head when his contract's at an end and say, we want you to stay. He's given so many good years of service to City, and he probably just wanted to be in a family environment and every day see his son and be around family. And I'm not mad at that. I think that's a nice thing for someone to do. With Sociedad, I mean, I didn't realise, Reece, I'll be honest with you, how good their squad was. I mean, just looking at the players, you've got Nacho Monreal, David Silva, Alexander Isaac, you've got Illaramendi, Januzaj, William Jose. There's a lot of good players in there, and what they're doing is they're capitalizing on the instability that exists in these other clubs, because Barcelona, if you read reports correctly, are desperately trying not to go bankrupt, not even just get players playing well on the pitch, to stay alive. And then Real Madrid, I mean, look, Real Madrid, they're just like, they'll buy their way out of trouble, as they always do. There's already talks of Mbappe for 160 million next year and Pogba for 80 million. So I think Real Madrid are more likely to be okay than Barcelona. But funny, Reece, you should mention the Barcelona thing. Guillaume Balaguer said something yesterday about Barcelona. Their project now has become unsustainable. They can't keep just operating the way they are. And there's a big issue between Barcelona and the players taking a pay cut to help obviously fund the club. So as to how it moves forward, I don't know, because I could see Madrid buying their way out of it, but Barcelona can't. So I don't know what happens next.
Well, look, to answer Mitchell's question, what is going on at Real Madrid, Barcelona, and how do they get out of it? One thing is certain is that we fast forward 20 years' time, and Real Madrid and Barcelona both will be major players in the European game. Mm-hmm. So the question is, how are they going to do that? Well, success is cyclical at the end of the day. Real Madrid don't have a squad at the moment, in my opinion, that can compete for Champions League titles, and neither do Barcelona, both of which can compete for the Spanish league. But we can talk about that league at a later date. I know our YouTube subscribers have been particularly on our back about calling certain leagues farmers' leagues. Yes. But shout out to Rangers fans, by the way, you're in a great league. And with regards to Real Madrid and Barcelona, well, Real Madrid are going to throw cash at it. They have the platform, they've got the worldwide audience. They are going to throw cash at it, and eventually they'll get it right. Is that sustainable? I'm unsure, because the level of money that club brings in, it's always an interesting question of just how much they can throw at the club. But their recruitment policy hasn't been great. I mean, you've got Ferland Mendy, who, he was meant to be Marcelo's replacement and could still be. But at the moment, he's nowhere near the conversation for the best left-back in the world, which Marcelo was for a good 10 years. Yeah. You look at people like Eden Hazard. They spent nearly 100 million on Eden Hazard. I think he's what 2 goals in 2 years.
I mean, he's just put on weight. He's just got fat. That's all he's done, really.
It hasn't worked. They brought in Rodrigo for big money. That hasn't worked. Luka Jovic looks awful, and they're resorting back now to Benzema, who's starting his 32nd consecutive season with Real Madrid. So there's lots of players. You look at Toni Kroos, Luka Modric, they're both over the hill. You look at people like Marcus Llorente, who didn't work. They got rid of him. You look at Asensio, who's nowhere near the squad at the moment. You got Valverde. All these players are not working, so they probably will throw money at it. But they're going to have to throw so much money in so many different positions that you've got to talk 2 years before that team could even play together in a way that can win titles and can win Champions Leagues. But it will happen. They will get out of it because they will throw money at it. Like you said, Barcelona don't necessarily have that privilege unless they sell their big players. But you look around their team, you think, well, who in that squad's commanding a transfer fee of over 60, 70 million pounds unless you sell the big man, right?
Yeah.
But with Barcelona, their trouble has been because they've thrown money at the team. They've bought Griezmann for huge money. and it hasn't worked.
Yeah.
Coutinho, huge money, hasn't worked. De Jong, the same. I mean, De Jong, not so much that it hasn't worked, just that he's a work in progress. You know, they never really replaced Dani Alves. They never really replaced Carles Puyol. And you look at their squad, you think the big money signings that they've made, they haven't worked. Now, that president's leaving. He's stepping down. They're getting a new one. You hope, you imagine that they will go back to the philosophy that Barcelona are all about. And what that philosophy is promoting academy prospects. They've got Serginho Dest in there, which they have bought in, but he's young. And he looks good. They've got Ansu Fati, who's, I believe, is an academy prospect. He is very, very good. And he will be, you know, a world beater in a few years' time, I'm sure. They've got Pedri, who, again, looks very good. All these players get to learn off Messi, which is unique in world football, because I doubt it with Ronaldo so much, but I imagine Messi is more of a teacher. Now, it's going to take years. It could take 2 or 3 years, and it will take 2 or 3 key big signings for Barcelona. But eventually, that academy will churn out world-class Spanish or foreign Brazilian footballers. It will do. You look at the success they've had over the years. You look at the acquisition of Neymar from Brazil, and he was unbelievable for them. You know, you look at other players that they've signed. You know, young players that they've signed and developed into their team. And it's the correct way to go about doing things for Barcelona. They've tried to stray away from it, and it really hasn't worked. It's backfired. They'll have a new president. They'll figure out the best way to move forward, and they will move forward. But this was happening. If not now, it's going to happen in 2 years' time when Lionel Messi decides to hang up his boots. You know, it's going to happen, Barcelona fans. You from now and for the next 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, they're unlikely to win anything in world football.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth there, Reece. I was going to say at least another 5, 6 years plus for Barca to win anything. I back Madrid quicker, to answer Mitchell's question. I would back Madrid quicker to come out of it than Barca, purely because of the money they'll throw at it. I'll be interested to keep an eye on the Barcelona developments in the new year, because financially they are in a real pickle. Like, they're not, money doesn't grow on trees, and they're finding out the hard way that you cannot make financial mistakes or the level of financial mistakes that they've made. So to answer your question, Mitchell, I think Madrid will buy their way out of it. I think Barcelona will go through another cycle, maybe in 6 or 7 years' time, and they'll come back again. And to answer Becky's question, I think Man City were perfectly right to say goodbye to David Silva. We agreeing on that, Reece?
Yep.
I love it. Right, first time we've ever agreed on it.
I think it is. Is that a milestone then?
I'm quite shocked. I'm fucking gobsmacked that we've actually done something. But anyway, that's pretty much everything wrapped up. I mean, Reece, do you have anything else you want to go over before we...
All good for me.
No, we're all good. So yeah, that is us done for this week. Becky should be back next week, schedule permitting. If not, you'll have us 2 again, and keep doing our things. So remember to subscribe, very important. Like, very important. Add us up on the social media, very important as well. And get in the comments below and let us know your opinions. And
also we'll be doing transfer videos before long for the January transfer window. So we'll be looking at mainly for the Premier League clubs. However, if you're watching this podcast and you're a fan of Wrexham, you're a fan of Salford City, whoever you're a fan of, if you want us to take a look at your club and figure out what it needs and what can be done, and we're happy to do a video for it, we'll have a look at it.
Fact, that's exactly it. We'll be back next week with more content, and we will see you then, people. Take care. Ciao.